Oh, yo, it's me again. Wait a second. What the fuck? Why is that on? That's not actually what I was meant to read. Let's go there. There we go. WAN show. Why is WAN show there? That guy. Let's see. Okay.
Actually made a little bit of a ding. Watch a bit surprised that's for streaming products for streamers today, and I had to dig in and rip this thing. Maybe dug in a little bit too hard. Actually made a little bit of a ding in this guy, but I bought it myself, so we're gonna give it away at the end of this video. Someone who likes comments and
anything they don't understand, they call magic.
What do you get for the girl who has everything? More.
I got your back. Remember me tell you.
Because if you ain't got to play loop anymore, we're on a map that has loot.
Oh, yeah.
Introducing your champion.
Okay.
I know you had more fun with Fuse and Bang.
I do.
I like this spot. Eyes on the prize.
We'll definitely be first to land here.
Usually what I'm going for.
An enemy landed near me.
Oh god. Fucking charge rifle and a P20? For real?
First blood. First blood, and not the good bludgeoning kind.
You want a Havoc or a Scout?
I got it. I got rid of that shit like a bad habit, bro.
Peacekeeper here.
Oh yeah. There we go.
Extend laser sight here. Level 2. Extended light. Just 7 scout here. Oh, dip.
Looking for heavy ammo.
I have a.
Did you guys land
heavy
over there?
Mag I can give
Did
you.
you guys land over there?
Hold here. Level 3.
No,
Nope, someone's there.
I did not.
Taking fire. Firing. Reloading.
2 here. They're hurt, but
What the fuck? Either I'm lagging or this dude's got something, because I just all of a sudden stopped doing damage. He never moved, and I did 128 and then it just didn't do
third one
anymore.
coming in.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Knock, knock. I'm here, Mr. Pathfinder.
Tribes, this is gonna be yours. I'll announce it one week. Gotta figure out how I announce those. Where do I announce it? Twitter? Maybe you announce it in a video. I'll find you. But it fascinates me. The Yeti used to be the king of USB microphones, and then Blue/Logitech just kind of stopped touching it. Until today, when they released the Yeti GX and the Yeti Orb and a new light, the Lytra LX, which is definitely my favorite of the 3 of these things. But we're gonna go over all 3. I'm gonna tell you the good thing. I'm gonna tell you the bad thing.
Valkyrie extending re-engage.
Let's jump into it before I turn into a ball of sweat. Okay, so before we jump into this, I'm going to share with you a free and easy way to turn your live streams into clips and compilations for your social media platforms. And then also the $25 giveaway in the sponsor section. If you haven't heard of Sizzle.gg yet, they're the sponsor for today's video, and they're also a great and free way to turn your live streams into other social media content. They will take your live streams and cut it into clips and compilations for your social media content, and you don't have to know anything about how to edit it. They'll do it for you. Just go to my link in the description down below, sign up for a free account, and then link it with your Twitch or YouTube channel. And then Sizzle will watch and analyze your stream to find the best moments and just cut them into compilations for you. It's like a free editing robot. In fact, this robot is so sophisticated that you can even tell it you specifically want to find kills or headshots or knockdowns or sniper kills or victories. How this works is when you're done streaming, you go to Sizzle.gg and you select one of your live streams for it to edit for you. You let it know what game you were playing, and then it just does the rest. And then with a single click, you can just share it straight to social media platforms, whether horizontal or vertical, and then just enjoy your free content. Use it to not only bring new people into your streams, but also make some ad revenue on other levels. I've personally been hyper-focusing lately on finding ways to diversify my content more, and this just kind of seems like a no-brainer. And as for the $25 giveaway, Sizzle.gg is going to PayPal 2 of you that sign up for a free account. So it's free money. Go sign up at the link in the description down below. Start getting some free content for your social media channels, and maybe even get $25 for, I guess, whatever you need $25 for. New game, New
The battle
skins?
happens quick. Be
What do
ready.
you want? Back in the video. Let's jump into the MGX and let's just immediately dive into the good. I love Logitech's new microphone design that they're going. It takes a lot of design nods from their XLR dynamic mic, the Sona they released recently, with the one-sided arm, which I really like, a brush metal enclosure, and the 50-50 design of the microphone. I gotta say, I like the way this looks. Plus the RGB they added to it. Not just a little light of G, but this really smooth, really well diffused ring. We'll get to more later. Another thing that I would consider a huge upgrade for streamers is that it's a dynamic mic, meaning it's going to get rid of a lot of the sounds from the side and the rear. Things like AC running in the room, keyboard mouse clicks, or people talking in the background are not going to pick up as much in this microphone because dynamics are very, very proximity sensitive. You should be about 3 to 4 inches away from it and directly in front of it, otherwise it doesn't feel very well at all. Also, props, Logitech. I like that you made it very clear on the box what part you're supposed to talk into, because you know you're still going to get some people talking into it like this. Don't do that.
Is that everyone that landed here?
I also have to say, for the sound quality, I was impressed with it after I added Blue Voice. And if you're looking for music for your YouTube videos, you should check out streambeats.com and download all the tracks for free. And if you're looking for some music for YouTube videos, you should check out streambeats.com and download all the tracks for free. But once I activated Blue Voice and messed around with some of the settings, I actually got it to sound really good. So far, the microphone's looking pretty good. And out of the box, for a microphone, it is. The problem started once I started looking into the features. Dislike number one, I don't like Logitech G-Hub. I've never had a good experience in G-Hub. Even just messing with it, there were a ton of bugs. I couldn't adjust the gain without it jumping back to the preset gain. I tried to download some custom audio presets other people had made from their marketplace, and they just never showed up where they were supposed to show up. But more importantly, I hate the level of permissions that G-Hub requires you to grant it. I feel like I'm giving it way too much access to my computer just to run a microphone. Like, there's no need for it. Dislike number two, there's still no mixing software with this, similar to what we get with the Beacon microphone or the Elgato microphone. Even Razer's microphones ship with some kind of mixing software, even though it's really poorly done. Now, I know that nowadays a lot of these solutions, you can plug in any microphone into it, and so it's not really necessary to ship with it anymore. However, in order for me to use this with Elgato Wavelength, I have to have some kind of Elgato Wave product, like a Stream Deck Plus. And that is an additional $200 purchase just to get the mixing capabilities. However, if you were already planning on getting a Stream Deck, then it doesn't matter. But I have to say, the main feature missing from this that confused me was the lack of a headphone jack. The reason I love having a headphone jack built into my microphone is I like to be able to hear my voice back into my ears without any delay. And if I were to plug this into my PC and then plug my headphones into my PC and monitor that way, I would get enough of a delay, enough of a latency, that it would make it almost impossible for me to talk. It ends up being a speech jammer challenge, if you need to remember that.
And I would also like green peppers and onions.
Now, I've found the streaming community to be very split on that feature. Some of you hate monitoring your voice in your headphones. Some of you can't live without it. And I'm in that second group. If I can't hear what I sound like in my own headphones, I end up screaming at the microphone. But it's a large enough feature that I feel like this microphone has already ostracized half of the potential audience. So while half of you don't care about it, I'd say it's a deal breaker for the other half of you, and it seems like a weird feature to just leave out of a $150 microphone. So do I recommend this microphone? Free, but once I
Need energy ammo.
have to have some kind of Elgato Wave product, like the Stream Deck Plus. The main feature missing from this that confused me was the lack of a headphone jack. The reason I love having a headphone jack is I like to be able to hear.
Being shot at.
It's a cool, simple microphone that sounds pretty good. And hey, so before we jump in, the diffuse ring on another thing that I would jump into the MGX and let's just immediately dive into the good. I love Logitech product like a Stream Deck. And this that confused me was the lack of a headphone jack. The reason I love having a headphone jack built into my microphone is I like to be able to hear my voice back into my ears without any delay. And if I were to plug this into my PC and then plug my headphones into my PC and monitor that way, I would get enough of a delay, enough of a latency built into my microphone is I like to be able to hear my voice back into my ears without any delay. And if I were to plug this into my PC and then plug my headphones into my PC and monitor that way, I would get enough of a delay, enough of a latency that it would make it almost impossible for me to talk. It ends up being a speech jammer challenge, if any of you remember that.
And I would also like green peppers and onions.
Now, I've found the streaming community to be very split on that feature. Some of you hate monitoring and voicing headphones. Some of you can't live without it. And I'm in that second group. If I can't hear what I sound like in my own headphones, I end up screaming into my microphone. But it's a large enough feature that I feel like this microphone has already ostracized half of the potential audience. So while half of you don't care about it, I'd say it's a deal breaker for the other half of you, and it seems like a weird feature to just leave out of a $150.
You want to get away?
So do I recommend this microphone? I think it's a cool, simple microphone that sounds pretty good. And
Did one get away? Are you guys going to communicate or not?
You have a game mounter, so you can click in order to lock that game in place. Plus, you can mount this
Rendering just says,
ha 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 ha, or at the bottom of this cool little sidearm thing. So it really just depends on how much you agree with my dislikes or not. If you're just looking for a beautiful dynamic microphone in this price range that sounds good and has cool RGB, this is kind of the only one. So do with that what you will. Let's jump to the orb. This is the Yeti Orb. This seems like a direct successor to the Snowball, but with an updated design that I think looks really cool. And that's it. We got some simple RGB on there, a little stand for it, and two mounting holes. So you can decide if you want to aim up and it's on your desk, or go straight to the bottom and on and off, which they didn't have to do, but they did anyway. So thanks for that. The thing is, it's a $60 microphone, and it sounds fine, and it looks cool. And so that's a win in my book. That's where you could have stopped. The last thing you want, I really thought they've done it in the past, brought it up before, and they're still doing it. They over-advertise, and they give you some false promises. That's going to just aren't real at all. One of the biggest features they're advertising.
I got two behind me.
Focus on your voice. Focus on your voice. Condenser mic capsule optimizes your voice, ignoring noises that get in the way of your play. Basically saying that it picks up your voice, it doesn't pick up your keyboard or mouse clicks. And then next to it is a picture of the microphone on the desk, right next to the mouse and keyboard, about 2 or 3 feet away from the keyboard. So I tested this. This is a pretty quiet mouse and keyboard. Function, I guess. You hear that over my voice? How well do you hear this compared to my voice? Let's turn on blue voice, because it's got some noise reduction added into it. See if that helps, maybe? Maybe as I'm talking, what's going on because the noise reduction. Do you hear anything else? Is it focusing on my voice like it's supposed to? This is just made up. Oh no. Like Logitech, you have to stop doing this. I wanted to call you out with your stream cam where you took DSLR footage and pretended it was from your webcam. Then you still did it again with your Brio that Frank P had to call you out for, and now you're doing it again with the Orb. This is a $60 microphone and it sounds fine and has RGB. It's already better than any other $60 microphone. Don't do this stuff. It's weird. Anyway, I just gotta move on from that. But this microphone also has the same blue voice features, including voice changing and
How are we going up? Are we going over there? Or are we going straight up here?
And if you're looking for music for your YouTube videos, check out streambeats.com. Download all the tracks for free.
We ain't gonna make this.
I can memorize lines. Now let's talk about the Lytra Beam LX. How shiny am I getting? This beam has gotten so hot since I started filming. The Lytra Beam, which I called Lytra Beam when the first one came out, but I really liked that light. I actually used it for my stream because I liked how simple and clean it was mounted right above my monitor. In fact, there were 2 reasons I got rid of it. First of all, it is kind of a one-dimensional light, so it's got diffusion going left to right, or whichever direction you orient it, but it has no diffusion going the other way. So while that's not a deal breaker, I noticed that it wasn't as good as the lighting I was used to in my YouTube videos, and I had other professional lights, and I swapped it out. The other reason I swapped it out was I didn't like how it interfaced with G-Hub. It would create presets for every game that I watched. If I turned the light off and then launched a game where it was set to be on, the light would just turn on its own. So I don't know if they ever got rid of that, and I can just leave it as a light, but I did enjoy the light. I feel like this time around with the Litra LX, they turned it into something really, really unique. They've now turned it into two lights. So one light on the front, one light on the back. And the front light is a bi-colored face light that can transition between a warmer orangey light to a cooler blue light so that you can get it to light your skin tone perfectly. And on the back is a fully controllable RGB, which is super cool. And like, it's not just like, oh, it's shining blue now. You have so much control over what this light does. You can completely control, like, it was either 8 or 9 different RGB zones on the light, totally individually, and you can make
in progress.
Respawn beacon over there.
custom animations with their RGB animation. There's the animation animator, animation creator. I think it was animation builder. That's what it was. I mean, it's pretty wild how far you can take it, and you can also do the same thing with the RGB ring on the bottom of the Yeti GX. So for those of you who have maybe a secondary stream camera to the side or maybe behind you that shows your setup, you can now not only light your face, but with the same light that's only $150, you can also light up your entire wall in front of you. I gotta say, this is probably one of the most creative streamer light ideas I've seen, and whoever brought this to the table at Logitech, give that one a raise. So I will link to all 3 of these in the description down below, and while you're down there, hit the like button. If you're still watching, you obviously enjoyed the video. Maybe leave your favorite emoji in the comments, or engagement. And as always, happy stream.
I am with you, and you are with me. And today, we fight.
You and me.
Basically, in chip manufacturing, there are issues that happen when you create a chip. And let's say that this one chip has a couple cores that are damaged, so you can't put it in, say, a 4090. Instead of just throwing it away, you take away, say, a few more SMs and then make it the next GPU under that. Well, the GB202 is said to be the top-end GPU. Normally, it's 102, 100, so 100 is typically, you know, the data center GPU. And in this case, it is GB100, but then the card that makes up, say, the 4090 is usually the 102 card. But instead, it looks like NVIDIA, with Blackwell, is planning to further differentiate the accelerator cards from the gaming cards. So now it starts with 2, so it's a GB202. And as you can see, the configuration reportedly features 12 GPCs with 8 TPCs each, and there's 2 of those, so it's 16 times 12, which makes for a total of 192 SMs. And when we compare that to, say, the 4090, we can see the 4090 only has 128 SMs. Basically, if this is right, and let's say the GB202 is the GPU that goes into the 4090 and it utilizes all 192 SMs, it's a pretty massive jump from the 4090. And this, of course, means that even despite the rumors that we've been seeing that AMD isn't really going to be competing in the higher end with the next generation, NVIDIA is not going to just lay down flat. They're still releasing monster GPUs. And let's just say I'm excited for next gen. So while that does it for today, are you pumped for the RTX 5000 series, or what about AMD's next-gen CPUs? Let me know down in the comments below. And don't forget to try out Brilliant for free at brilliant.org/gamermelt. And as always, have a great day. Inside the tank is Brandon Burchak, and he is going to attempt to hold his breath for this entire video. Brandon is one of the world's foremost experts in breathwork, so please don't try this at home. I'll put his info in the description if you want to learn more. I'm going to keep this shot going continuously on the right side of the video. While he's holding his breath, we will figure out how he does it. And I'm even going to learn how to hold my breath way longer than I ever have before. I failed the very first level of swimming because I refused to put my head underwater. This is somewhat terrifying.
Rings moving, hustle up.
All the cells of the human body need oxygen in order to survive. Oxygen to react with glucose and produce ATP, the molecule that delivers energy wherever it's needed in a cell. Breathing is so important, it happens without conscious thought. It's under the control of the autonomic nervous system. When resting, we breathe about 12 times per minute, but that rate automatically increases when exercising. The brain knows how often we need to breathe using chemical sensors called chemoreceptors. There are chemoreceptors for CO2 in the carotid arteries and in the brainstem. Increasing CO2 in the blood makes it more acidic, and it's thought that this CO2 acidity is the main feedback mechanism that regulates breathing. CO2 is created at the same rate oxygen is used up, so acidic blood tells the body we're building up too much CO2 and therefore running out of oxygen, so we better breathe. The only known chemoreceptors for low blood oxygen are in the carotid arteries, but these are thought to play a smaller role in regulating breathing. And this is why hyperventilating before going underwater is a really bad idea, because hyperventilating expels a lot of CO2, making the blood more alkaline. But it doesn't actually increase the amount of oxygen in the blood, which is limited by the concentration of oxygen in the air and the number of red blood cells. So with the blood starting out alkaline, more CO2 must be produced before the CO2 chemoreceptors give you the urge to breathe, which means more oxygen will be used up. Sometimes to the point where the brain runs out of oxygen to stay conscious, so you can black out underwater before even getting the urge to breathe. If you want to maximize the time you can hold your breath for, you have to optimize two sides of an equation. First, you need to maximize the amount of oxygen in your body before you start and minimize CO2. And second, you have to reduce the rate at which oxygen is used up during the breath hold. So when we work with an athlete, one of the first things we do is we check their pulse score. Just tell them, all right, hold your breath. Breath, 30, 40 seconds or something, they breathe. That's your new pulse score. Where BOLT stands for Body Oxygen Level Test. If you want, you can try to hold your breath along with me. Whenever you're ready, give a really nice exhale, and then a really big inhale. The BOLT score just measures the number of seconds you can hold your breath before you feel the first urge to breathe. Your first inkling to breathe is when most people choose to breathe. Yeah. Like, that is exactly when I'm going to want to breathe. Some people are naturally better at holding their breath. The bigger your lungs, for example, the more air and hence oxygen you can hold. Most people have a lung capacity between 4 and 6 liters, but some people have a 10-liter capacity. I don't know. How's that? There you are. 10 seconds. Stretching can help expand what you've got. So I'll do like 90 degrees this way, 90, 90, and then also on my chest. And then I'll do it again at about half volumes of a lung pack. So like, and then I'll do it again. The ideal physique for breath holding is someone tall and skinny, with plenty of lung capacity, but not too much tissue to use up oxygen. Alex Segura, excellent breath holder. He's also built for it too. He's like 6 feet tall, weighs less than me. I mean, he's like a lung width.
Another technique that can increase the amount of air stored in the lungs is called lung hacking. After taking a full, deep breath, you continue to take little sips of air, putting it in.
You guys gonna help me at all, or just let me die?
And then I'll do about 20 hacks.
The other side of the equation involves reducing the rate oxygen is used.
Thank you, thank you.
And since muscles use oxygen to contract, it's very important to be relaxed. Go through the whole body, so we're going to do like a muscle check. We're going to hold it down and hold it. Once I hold my breath, now I'm just
We're gonna fight against something else?
Nothing is engaged. Wiggenden sometimes does performances where he's active during the breath hold. But since he's moving around, he uses up oxygen faster, and so doesn't hold his breath for as long. People actually have a secret weapon when it comes to reducing oxygen consumption by virtue of our evolution. It's called the mammalian dive reflex. All mammals have this physiological adaptation that helps us survive when we're submerged in water. The trigeminal nerve in our face detects the coolness of the water and triggers a series of responses. The heart beats slower, decreasing the rate at which blood and hence oxygen are circulated around the body. Our blood vessels in our extremities constrict,
Bro, why are you getting so far
to
away?
our vital organs and brain, ensuring we have enough oxygen to stay conscious.
If you take a freediving class, you can see your fingers, your hand, very sort of pale color.
If I do like a 10-minute breath hold, this will read at like 50 or 60, and then it'll just turn off. So I'll have no blood in my hand by the end of that long breath hold. And the brain releases extra pre-oxygenated red blood cells into the bloodstream, increasing the available supply of oxygen. The brain also uses a disproportionate amount of oxygen.
Mental activity, neural activity also used to trying to preserve.
When your body's not moving, your brain is using 80% of the oxygen that your body is utilizing. 80%. It's like a big little amount. So you kind of want to turn that off a little bit. You want to give yourself some sort of mantra that you can just keep cycling back and forth. You kind of want to stop thinking, but you do need to pass the time somehow, and you have to fight against this urge to breathe. So give yourself something short, something that you can remember, and then you get through the mantra enough times that you'll pass another maybe 20, 30 seconds toward the end of the breath hold, particularly when it's really hard and the CO2 is high and you're dealing with a really bad bout of acidotic response.
Battling the enemy.
Once you do your body check, I want you to go through the alphabet, and I want you to have a gratitude.
Watch my back.
The more you practice this, the better you get at just the sensation of compassion or gratitude, and then that itself is very, very fast. When I do a really big breath, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm on like cloud nine. I'm just like between 5 and 15 minutes. I feel like I'm just like on a rocket ship at like 1,000 miles an hour.
Just giving
Like,
my shields a
not thinking or
recharge.
feeling anything. I just have like a sensation and like a color. But that's because the whole experience is a little bit psychedelic. After a half hour of practicing with Brandon in the pool, this is the longest breath hold I was able to achieve.
Delivering replicator.
I'll leave it running at the bottom of frame here. Just know that that urge to breathe is just your body lying to you. You do not need to breathe. You have plenty more time. So when you get that urge to breathe, relax, just appreciate it for what it is. It's just your body taking a real-time pH readout, sending a signal, telling you to expel CO2, and you're totally fine. You've got maybe like 4 or 5 minutes until you drown. So you're totally good. So when you get that urge to breathe around a minute, relax, appreciate it for what it is, and then I want you to try to count to 10, like as slowly as you can. Just give yourself 10 extra seconds after the urge to breathe. Okay? Alright. I practice breathing at a set rhythm, and I want you to breathe about 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Just through yourself. I will not see long. And again, as much as you can, but without engaging any muscle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out. Followed by holding my breath for increasing durations.
Looks like a care package is coming in.
I'm not comfortable not breathing for this long.
Well, you made it about a minute. Nice. So you had 130.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, crushed. And where to start?
We got a fight over here.
Amazing.
For real? What was that?
We made about 145, close to 150.
I modified the strategies Brandon suggested to keep my mind calm. I think what I was doing that time was going through the alphabet and just, I couldn't do gratitudes. They were too hard. But I was just like doing animals.
Yeah, great.
And I was like,
good way
hey.
to gently distract the mind.
Double timing it.
I was singing like nursery rhymes.
Nice.
Something I do for my kids. I'm just gonna sing some of the songs I sing for them. I was skeptical that my heart rate would drop significantly, but my watch showed that the mammalian dive reflex really did kick in. My average heart rate was 72.
38 you got that. Nice.
That's wild. I don't even get down to 48 when I sleep. Like, that's low. That's awesome. I think, like, when have I not breathed for a minute? Maybe never my whole life.
Just giving my shields a reach out.
I just got 336. I think I can guarantee that I've never held my breath for 2.5 minutes. Yeah.
We know where that last team is.
How do you distract your mind for a few minutes? You know, like how do you stay calm when you feel like, yeah, this is not something I'm used to? Calming my mind while holding my breath was honestly the most challenging.
Well, up top.
Have a knowledgeable, experienced guide there, Brandon, to help me through. And I think that sort of assistance can be helpful in everyday life. Which is why this part of the video was sponsored by BetterHelp.
He's alone. Get it.
BetterHelp is simple. Connect you with an experienced, licensed therapist who is
Oh my God, he's behind now.
helpful, unbiased advice. And I know from personal experience that finding a good therapist is hard, especially when you only have.
You guys had great comms through that whole game.
BetterHelp changes the game on this. It's an online platform, and by filling out a few questions, you'll get matched with a professional therapist, so you can get talking in as little as a few days. You can have your therapy sessions as a phone call, as a video chat, or even via messaging if you prefer that. Whatever's the most comfortable version of therapy for you. It's easy to sign up. There's a link in the description. It is betterhelp.com/Veritasium. Clicking that link both helps support this channel, and it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. So you can try it out and see if it helps you. And if you don't really fit with your first therapist, which is common, you can easily switch to a new one for free without stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. Regardless of if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human who lives in this world who has fears or stresses, I can't recommend speaking to an experienced professional enough. To give BetterHelp a try, visit betterhelp.com/Veritasium or click that link in the description. And now, back to breath holding. So I managed to hold my breath for 2 minutes and 36 seconds, but that is nowhere near the record. In 2014, Branko Petrovic held his breath for an astonishing 11 minutes and 54 seconds. He did this after breathing just regular air. But there are additional ways to extend breath hold duration. One way is to spend time at high altitude or in low oxygen chambers. So right now it's set to like 5,000 meters. In the chamber, yeah, there's not a lot of O2. Right, very low. This triggers your body to create more red blood cells, increasing your oxygen carrying capacity. But if you really want to extend your time, you could breathe pure oxygen beforehand. Brandon's record for a non-oxygenated breath hold is 10 minutes. But with oxygen, he has held his breath for 23 minutes. Breathing pure oxygen is dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. I don't relish especially dangerous for freedom. I relish the kill. If you do that and you pass 6 meters, 5 to 6 meters, your risk of oxygen toxicity is much higher. But if done correctly, breathing pure oxygen before a hold can extend it dramatically.
The current record is held by Budimir Sobat, who held his breath for 24 minutes and 37 seconds after breathing pure oxygen.
Let's make a choice. Land here.
For this video, Brandon
go.
went through
Ready
a
up.
lengthy breathe-up process. And the last part involved breathing pure oxygen. Here, he is packing in the last few gulps.
Enemies drop down near
But
me.
even with oxygen, remaining submerged for all this time isn't easy. With his wife, Brandon has pioneered the first active underwater performance that lasts 10 minutes.
It's one thing to choreograph a piece and direct it and put it together when you are able to communicate normally, when you're not dealing with different elements, but when you have a man underwater and you're trying to set something to music and you're trying to give direction and you're trying to piece it together with an aerial dance. We've had some really big projects in our careers, but this is unlike any other challenging piece of theatre that we've had to put together, that's for sure. We have been done before, we're writing as we go, and we're trying to make sure that, you know, we have to take risks to make something that's this crazy, but, you know, it's that limit, right? How far do you go, how far do you push? But I think we're dancing on that line.
You have the urge to breathe, and it starts kind of like maybe a little bit in the chest or like the lower diaphragm. But then eventually you'll start to really have these like convulsions. CO2 has a slight narcotic effect as well. You get it high enough, you lose sense of time. And that's one of the ways that you know that your breath hold is over.
What do you mean you lose a sense of time? Time is slow or time is fast? You have no idea how fast time passes?
No, you're screwed. Your urge to breathe increases.
Fantastic drop.
And the urge to breathe just plummets.
Gotta hop up here. 45.
And you're like, oh, I'm fine. But your body's like, not fine. 16 minutes. So that's when you gotta pull the plug. And if you want to learn how to hold your breath for up to 5 minutes, check out Brandon's information in the description. What was going on in your head?
In the first few minutes, I'm just focused on retaining that really heavy pack and not letting my epiglottis come open or losing any air, making sure that while I'm engaging that, I'm not also engaging other muscles, like my traps or my back or my intercostals. So just focusing on that one tiny muscle group that I need to engage, making sure that everything else is calm. And then after about 5 minutes, my lung volume goes down enough that I can really relax. So then typically between 5 and 15 minutes, I'm super relaxed. I have this sense of falling, I feel super euphoric, and then typically after 15, then the CO2 starts to encroach on me, and as it goes up, I have to focus more and more on fighting the mechanisms of the urge to breathe, like my diaphragm, like my intercostals, like my epiglottis fluttering, stuff like that.
You feel a difference in your blood when you're release it?
Charging battery.
What does that mean?
Acidic. Feels like the urge to breathe. You do it enough times, you get used to it.
California Governor Gavin Newsom has vetoed legislation in the state of California that would have required human drivers to be present in self-driving trucks on public roads. Now, I do think that maybe we will come to a day where we can trust the technology and have 10,000-pound trucks, you know, serve as autonomous vehicles on our roads. I don't think we're there yet. But nonetheless, the legislation vetoed Friday night would have banned self-driving trucks weighing more than 10,000 pounds, ranging from UPS delivery vans to massive big rigs, from operating on public roads unless a human driver is on board. Now look, there are two reasons why the supporters of this legislation voted in favor of it. At issue are jobs, but there's also some issue with the lack of safety, because there have been a number of pretty big collisions. So people are concerned about kind of putting the cart before the horse and allowing these vehicles to operate on public roads, which have caused problems for regular civilians and also for EMS and fire departments. So Newsom has said that he's vetoing the legislation because existing regulations are sufficient. I'm going to show you the receipts to prove that they are not. Newsom pointed to 2012 legislation that allows the State Department of Motor Vehicles to work with the California Highway Patrol, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and others with relevant experience or expertise to determine the regulations necessary for the safe operation of autonomous vehicles on public roads. We also have lawmakers, and they voted to essentially restrict this and regulate it to some extent until it's safe to have these on the roads, but he vetoed that. And as of September 20th of 2023, the DMV has received 655 autonomous vehicle collision reports, which some experts say is actually an underestimate. But that only has to do with collisions. There are other giant issues with autonomous vehicles on public roads. Now, Newsom, who typically enjoys strong support from labor, faced some pressure from within his administration not to sign it, meaning they wanted him to veto the bill. His administration's Office of Business and Economic Development says it would push companies making self-driving technologies to move out of state. I mean, I think the chaos and poor management of the state has also led to a lot of people moving out of state. Maybe they should deal with that first, but they can't be bothered. Jane.
Yeah, so I remember when LASIK surgeries came out, the ones for the eyes, and I thought, I'm going to let others do it first. Now, as it turned out, those turned out to be perfectly fine, right? And once you find out, I never wound up having it, but after 10 years or so of other people having it and their eyes not falling out, I realized, that works fine. With autonomous vehicles, I don't think that they're definitely going to be worse than human drivers. Human drivers are pretty bad to begin with. I mean, if you're a member of the Young Turks, you've heard me tell you my stories. So you might rather have an autonomous car than have me drive. And humans make thousands of mistakes all the time, so it's not like we're at the gold standard or anything. But this has got to get proven out a lot better before we start saying the trucks.
Big rigs.
Big rigs can cause enormous collisions. I mean, it's one thing when cars get into an accident, that's already terrible enough. I saw a gruesome one just a couple of days ago, a car on fire. I don't want to talk about it, but when a rig rolls over, there could be explosions, there could be tons of cars that are affected. Then the cars pile up, depending on if it's on a highway, etc. So that should be the very last part. Like, okay, we've proven this 1,000 ways over that it's safer than humans, so we're now going to the trucks. You don't just jump to, let's try it with the trucks and see what happens. And that number of accidents that have already happened with autonomous vehicles is not that comforting. That's a big state. So that's not a giant number within the context of how many people are. But remember, it's not like everybody in the state has an autonomous driving car.
Mostly in the Bay Area.
Yes.
Mostly in the Bay Area. It's really important to keep that in mind when you look at that 655 collision figure. But I want to give you some other data on this that I think is super relevant, and it doesn't even pertain to trucks or big rigs. So in San Francisco, 2 robo-taxi companies got approval last month from state regulators to operate in the city at all hours. So these are autonomous,
I'll take it from here.
robo-taxis. And there have been some issues. For instance, as CNBC reports, a Cruise self-driving car was involved in a crash with a San Francisco Fire Department truck just 1 week after California regulators approved 24/7 robo-taxi service in San Francisco. One person was taken to a hospital via ambulance with what the company, keep in mind this is the company, saying that there were non-severe injuries, okay? San Francisco firefighters, this is super relevant, had expressed concern about the rollout before the incident occurred. Quote, our folks cannot be paying attention to an autonomous vehicle when we've got orders to throw, San Francisco Fire Chief Janine Nicholson said at a public meeting ahead of the commission's approval. Nicholson cited multiple instances of self-driving vehicles obstructing emergency operations in the meeting, including blocking firehouse doors, running through emergency tape, and obstructing roadways. Officials from the city's fire department, police department, and municipal transportation agency prepared a report of at least 600 incidents with driverless vehicles since June of 2022, including unpredictable operations near an emergency response zone, obstructing travel to an emergency, contact or near misses with personnel or equipment, and more. So this is outside of the collisions that the Department of Motor Vehicles has been keeping tabs on. So aside from the collisions, clearly there are other massive issues. And look, I'm not saying that there won't come a day when these trucks can operate without an actual human within them. But it's too early. It's way too early. It's clear it's way too early, but they don't care. They're going to move forward anyway because this is what the business community wants. And the threat is, if you don't give us what we want, then we're going to move to a different state.
Yeah, look, I'm super unbiased here, and partly because of my own perspective, that I've seen plenty of crappy human drivers, including myself. And so I don't want to use just selective evidence. Oh, we only tell you when the robot cars cause accidents, but we don't tell you when the humans cause gross accidents, right? Like maybe hitting 3 cars at once in a KFC parking lot, maybe.
When you do that, when you somehow miraculously crash into 3 different cars in the KFC parking lot, Jane, the vehicle owners know who to come to for the resources, right? They know to come to you and basically demand that your insurance pay for the damages. I'm a bit worried this is going to be further down the line. Like, what kind of deregulation are these companies going to secure when it comes to basically skirting responsibility for the collisions their autonomous vehicles cause?
Anna, you went to where I was going. So, but on the other hand, guys, when companies step into the mix, I would say bribe, and the rest of the reporters would say give campaign contributions to politicians because they happen to agree. When they step into the mix, then all of a sudden you disperse accountability. So the famous example I give you guys all the time is the largest Medicare fraud in history is done by Rick Scott's company. The company is found guilty of fraud, but none of the employees none of the executives are, including Rick Scott. Rick Scott doesn't go to jail. He gets $300 million bonus for that robbery well done. And now we've shown you a bunch of cases where the court said the company did something terrible, they're guilty. And then nothing happens. They pay a small fine out of their profits, and no one goes to jail. So it's a weird way of completely avoiding responsibility for anything, including life and death situations. So we have to be extraordinarily careful, especially when it's related to companies like this. Now, which leads me to his business office, Newsom's business office, saying, "Whoa, Gavin, let's make sure we back the companies here rather than the voters." Well, look, sometimes when governors look out for business, or any politician looks out for business interests, it can be totally legitimate. And in fact, somebody at the book signing in New York thanked me for sticking up for small businesses. There's a lot of small businesses, and sometimes they get steamrolled. And if a legislator is looking out for them, good, wonderful, okay? And you should balance interests no matter what all the time, right? But most of the time in politics these days, when they say they're looking out for business interests, that means they're looking out for their donors. And so, well, we have to balance interests these days with as corrupt as politics is in America. Usually means, no, we're going to do whatever our donors tell us to do. And if it turns out they're not quite ready, but we're going to unleash a squadron of big rigs with nobody driving them, as long as I'm getting my campaign donations, I'm good with it. That makes me really, really worried.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the situation we're in here.
So look, Newsom, I have no doubt, is planning to run for president. If it's not going to be in 2024, it'll be in 2028. And so maybe he should consider how it's going to look when he vetoes legislation that could lead to severe injuries and potentially death as a result of collisions with autonomous vehicles. But you know, it's
we got 2 over by us over here.
Like he cares about people's lives anyway.
if you enjoy this video, that's because of our members. They make us
You're gonna get pinned in there.
independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. You don't remember today by hitting the join button.
This device here is Lenovo's Legion 9i. It's the craziest and most powerful and most ambitious laptop that they have right now. But see, years ago, Lenovo sucked at making good stuff. But then in like 2019, they figured it out. And they started making really good stuff. And now, they have some of the best devices on the market. So they have like the 5 family, these are really good. Mid-tier products, everyone loves them. And then at the top end, they have the Legion 7 products. Awesome stuff, and I think the reviews, like, they're really good. But at least when you put Lenovo side, but the thing is, when you already make one of the best gaming laptops available on the market, the Legion 7 has a bag of laptops. Try to make something that's actually better. And you see that the line between like the innovation and the image is perfect. So this Legion 9i has a 4 carbon fiber, 70 just for a second, it doesn't have structure. Now, the forward carbon fiber is quite different from the more commonly seen carbon fiber. But how much you appreciate it is very subjective. Like, personally, I think it's very neat looking, but I don't know if I want my first one device to look like this. But at the very least, it's like this subtle way of just flexing the device that you have. Because if you're a sweaty laptop nerd like myself, you see someone with this thing, like, come on, you know for, like, immediately, it's the Legion 9i. There's nothing else quite like this. But if Lenovo's trying to make something extra special, they have to tackle performance, right? The thing is, in 2023, it is very difficult to be the best performing laptop because every player in this space right now is making really good devices. They all have RTX 4090s that can run at 175 watts. They're all properly cooled. They're all reasonably thin and light. Like everyone's making amazing top tier devices. And if you're digging in that bag of laptop innovation, you got to come up with something, right? So Lenovo did the world's first integrated water cooler for laptops. So there's no external pumps or radiators. It's all built within this system. And on top of that, they're running a triple fan setup. So it all sounds amazing, right? RTX 4090 at 175 watts. You got the 13980HX top of line CPU. We have the integrated water cooler. We have the 3-fan setup. Let's take a look inside. So this here is an early sample of the thermal solution they're using. On the top, we have the 2 big fans, the left and right. And then we have the smaller fan underneath the WASD keys. But up here is a little device that's housing the water pump. So this pump was designed in collaboration with Cooler Master, and when the system hits 84 degrees Celsius, that pump is supposed to activate and it's supposed to pump water or liquid through that loop. Now, just a quick look at this pump because I was curious and cracked it open. It's a small centrifugal pump and it looks to be pushing like, I don't know, 10 milliliters of fluid, maybe even less. It's not a lot, but it is legit. Like there's clearly something that's moving there and it's capable of pushing liquid around. Now, when I flip this thing over, you can see that the copper pipes of the liquid cooler are actually sitting directly on top of the video memory, like these little things that are covered in pink. That's what this loop does. The cooler water runs through, it tags the hot VRAM, and it goes back into the pump. So when I look at this, I'm like, this is neat, right? Because VRAM, it gets really hot. That stuff can hit like 100 degrees pretty readily, and when you have some kind of system to cool it, that should help, right? But then as I looked into this, I thought, wait a minute. How is this really working? Because sure, it's picking up heat from the VRAM, but when it goes back into the pump, there's nothing special that's cooling the loop. It's just the regular heat pipes that are pulling the heat off of that water loop, and then the system fans are exhausting the heat. And I thought, wait a minute, what is the point of this water loop then? Like the traditional water cooler on a desktop, you have your water block that makes contact with something hot, like the CPU or GPU, and then you have this radiator, like so the liquid will be pumping around, but then you have this radiator and you have this fan that connects right up to the radiator, and you're cooling the liquid that is being heated up by that device, right? And even with laptop water cooling, they have some devices out there. This one here is the one from Electronics. It's their new one. This is so cool. They have a magnetic system this time. It's like it's literally just connected magnetically. But the hot water, or sorry, the cold water will come through the system into the laptop, get heated up, come out, and it goes into this box that has a radiator and a fan, and it cools down.
Bitch, what's with all this auto-uploaded bullshit? Fucking Amazon, you fuck. If I wanted to fucking sell that shit in Germany, Europe, or anywhere else, I would have fucking done it.
Small water pump. It's super compact. Gotta give them credit for that. That must have been difficult.
I mean, literally, there's a whole page of auto-uploaded shit by you bitches.
Very short for one, and then the pump is so
fuck?
small, the flow rate must be quite weak. So I needed to run some benchmarks. The first thing I noticed is that the Legion 9i does run a little cooler than the Legion 7 Pro. And I would say it's consistent, but it's just like 2 or 3 degrees. But then I realized I can physically disable the liquid cooling. Like I can unplug that pump and it will no longer circulate that liquid around. And so now I should test to see if it's actually doing anything. So I unplugged it and the laptop performed almost the exact same way. The only difference that I could spot is that when the pump was active, the VRAM temperature would peak in like 2.5 minutes, and when the pump was disabled, it would hit that temperature a lot faster, in like 40 or 50 seconds. So my conclusion was that the water loop didn't seem to be doing anything significant. Now, keep in mind that my testing here is crude. I don't have access to like replace that water loop with like a solid piece of copper to really determine more data, but it just seemed like the vast majority of that improved performance, thermal performance on the 9i comes from the triple fan setup. But the consequence of running a triple fan setup like this is that they've had to shift the keyboard down. So those 2 large fans you saw earlier, they're positioned here and here. These will blow the air through the system like pass through, and it's able to bypass the keyboard because there's nothing there, and just blows the hot air straight up top and then out the back as well. It's excellent airflow. It gets rid of heat quickly. But with this lowered keyboard, the ergonomics of this whole device have shifted. For one, their trackpad is a lot smaller. It's a great trackpad, but it's shrunken. Not everyone cares about it, but if you do, it is a small trackpad. But the typing experience does take time to get used to. Now, I will say, for a sunken keyboard or for a drop.
I set out on a mission today.
drops down keyboard. It's very good. I think Lenovo did they've engineered this in a manner so they've taken that into consideration. They expect people to be using these keyboards right off the laptop, and it feels good like that. But I would always prefer a regular keyboard layout over this. There's something about how your wrist is kind of like half off the palm rest that just, it's not the best. So if you look at the Legion 7 Pro, this is just like a more normal layout. When you have your hand on it, it just, your wrist is supported, right?
Sports. It's in the game.
No matter how big your hand is, the vast majority of your hand is going to be sitting here. On the 9i, because it's kind of sunken down like that, and I don't have like giant hands or anything, but when I'm typing on it, it's off. So that's the trade-off. You have to do something like this if you're going to. Have pass-through airflow that goes right through the system. Now, in terms of the keyboard itself, it is absolutely awesome. I do think that Lenovo makes the best keyboards in the laptop business. I don't like the number pad, but that's just a personal thing. But in terms of the actual typing experience, bingo. It does come with a set of ceramic keycaps, which are kind of cool to look at, but I did not enjoy how they work. So you can swap them out. They're very easy to swap in and out, but these are ceramic, and ceramic, at least this iteration of it, is a very slippery material, and it's like this slick surface that I didn't particularly like typing on, but some people might like the look of it. And in terms of the screen, this is a mini LED panel, 3200 by 2000, 165 hertz. It's beautiful to look at. It's super bright, but I think it's too high resolution. I think for a gaming panel on a 16-inch device, having this many pixels is just too pixel dense, and it's wasted resources for the GPU to pump out that many pixels, and it's just a lot of resolution for your eyes. You're not making use of it. I'm surprised they went with this for a device that's geared for gaming. I think any serious gamer, anyone looking at a device like this, would rather use a QHD panel, like the thing they have on the regular Legion 7 Pro. I have a feeling that they did this. They went with the higher resolution just for the paper specs, so that when you compare it side by side to the 7 Pro, this would somehow look better. And I wish they hadn't done that. It just doesn't make sense to me to have such high resolution screen on a 16-inch gaming device. All right, in terms of power supplies, to give you two of them, there's a 330 watt as well as a 140 watt. This is obviously like the maximum effort gaming. You plug this up, go full blast, and then this thing is for for travel or for work or for school. If you want something a little bit lighter for your payload, you can pick this thing up and travel with it. But my overall thoughts on this device, you see, there's nothing wrong inherently with this product. It really was the marketing that got me, and just the whole idea of like what they were trying to do. If the water cooling was more effective, I'd be all about this. Or the thing that kills me is like, if you're gonna do this, if you're gonna draw attention to the fact that you're the world's first liquid cooled, world's first integrated liquid cooled system, it should be like there should be benefits, like obvious benefits to it. And it just seems gimmicky to me. And the other thing is that with that water-cooled system, you've now introduced a component that can have a mechanical failure. It could leak. The pump could stop working. It's definitely more heavy. It's definitely more expensive. This system is $1,000 more than an equivalently equipped Legion 7 Pro. 1,000. And without getting, I guess, the carbon. Benefits of obvious benefits. Fiber lid. It's a little bit lighter. It's like 230 grams for my measurements. A little bit lighter than the Legion 7 Pro. Fractionally thinner. And the water pump. But the performance is largely the same. I'm not going to use the word largely. The performance is the same. And if you're gaming, and if you're actually an enthusiast gamer, you're looking for the best gaming experience, it wouldn't be this.
Well, it's always a great privilege to be coming to you from the home of football. We're at Wembley Stadium. My name is Derek Ray, and sitting alongside me in the commentary box, providing expert analysis, is Stuart Robson. And with the game just moments away now, this really ought to be a superb watch. It's England against Borussia Dortmund.
Well, thanks, Derek. It's been a really good start for them. They've played some nice football at times, and another win here, and it will push them into a really good position going into the second half of the season.
The actual gaming experience. It does detract from that actual gaming experience.
Trippier.
In your defense, considering that extra $1,000 this cost for the 7 Pro,
chance to finish.
That much more. It's so much, but at the same time,
it's opened up for him. Crucial intervention just then amid impending danger. In the opinion of the referee, that is a penalty.
So,
a clear penalty and a yellow card to boot. This to open the scoring here.
In
it goes! Calmly converted! Again, with the scoreline standing at 1-0.
It's actually a lot more GPU intensive than CSGO was, which is great because CSGO really, it was a little long in the tooth. It wasn't leveraging modern hardware. The downside of this, obviously, is that one of the key appeals of Counter-Strike over the decades now, has been that it is a much more accessible game than a lot of its other modern alternatives in terms of graphics and hardware and what's required. The goal we had going into this then was to look into that aspect and see, is it still relatively playable
Might be able to get in behind the defense.
And one of the things that we found was there's still some frame pacing issues. So looking into the frame times, it appears to be not necessarily vendor specific, but just in general. There's frame time pacing and consistency problems with Counter-Strike 2, but it does look a lot better, and the performance, at least from a standpoint of being more predictable and scaling properly card to card, that aspect has been largely improved upon. So there's some good and some bad, and we're going to look at that today. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Throw and Pick Swappable Blade Fans, available in 120. RX 7900 XTX at 1440p and very high. We have the scale zoomed here. As you can see here, overall the frame times were under 5 milliseconds, which is great. That means we're in the hundreds of frames per second as a rate. But with each pass, we saw sporadic spikes north of 16 milliseconds, and actually a lot worse than that. Here's the zoomed out chart. Pass 1 and 4 both had spikes over 120 milliseconds, but two 120 millisecond spikes out of thousands of frames won't hurt an average. Let's zoom that out again. There it is. We had a hard stutter at 730 milliseconds. Here's an example of a 730 millisecond stall. We'll repeat them a few times. That's 7/10 of a second. It's noticeable. As a one-off, we can discard it, maybe an outlier. And we always leave room for potential test error or system error. But this happened in more scenarios than just this card, and in more passes. To show that this isn't just an AMD thing, but rather seemingly a game of chance, here's a frame time plot with the RTX 4060. And this one, things are overall steady and predictable, until one of our passes that blew out the chart scale. This is the zoomed out version of the chart. We have a frame time spike to 900 milliseconds, which means as a player, you're staring at the same frame for nearly 1 full second. In an FPS game, even if only one of these occurs in the whole session, that's incredibly frustrating. That's a long time to be unable to get updated animation or information from things moving around on the screen, or to be unable to move or provide input. Here's the RTX 4070's frame times at 4K very high. While the spikes across this run aren't anywhere near as extreme as we saw in the last batch for the 7900 XTX or the 4060, the card did have more excursions than we typically see. The jump to about 60 milliseconds was the worst one in this set, with each run containing at least a couple spikes greater than 12 milliseconds, or sometimes up to 26 milliseconds, for deviation from the previous frame. Most players will notice a delta of 8 to 12 milliseconds from one frame to the next, so these are relatively large spikes. Still, nothing as bad as we've seen on, say, an ARC card with CSGO originally when Intel ARC first launched. But it's not great. We want to really emphasize here that, again, a few of these spikes won't ruin the experience. You'll notice them, but it's the patterned or repeated spikes that become noticeable and particularly bad, again, like we saw in CSGO with ARC originally. But if you look around online, you'll see people are already noticing some stuttering with CS2. Our conclusion with frame time pacing is that this isn't relegated to any one card or any one vendor, but rather it seems like a roll of the dice for how the game wants to behave that particular run. More heavily loaded cards seem to get triggered the most frequently, which makes sense. Like, for example, when we tested the RX 7600 at 4K, which is an inadvisable use case, but we did it to see what happened, it becomes completely unplayable, and it's not because of the frame rate average, it's because of the frame time pacing. That's the important part. It's not abnormal to have a low average with a high load, but it is bad to have bad pacing when the average is okay. And it's, again, not specific to AMD here. For purposes of comparison, then, we'll minimize our focus on the comparative 0.1% lows because they're so random. It doesn't really mean anything if one card has better 0.1% lows than another in these charts, because all that actually means is it had a clean run by roll of the dice with Counter-Strike. So, the averages are strong. We get to use tens of thousands of frames to create those averages. So those are the best numbers to work with. And let's get into the comparative charts. Tested at 4K very high first, we see immediately that even the RTX 4090 is GPU bound. That's good. It's a big difference from CSGO's messy, at times horrendous frame time behavior on modern GPUs. And singular spikes won't affect the average FPS here, like we were just saying, because as one spike to 900 milliseconds, even though it's terrible, out of, say, 40,000 frames for the test suite, it's not going to pull down the numbers, really. Anyway, the 4090 still has scaling room, even at 224 FPS average. The 4080 allows the 4090 to lead by about 37%, which is similar to what we saw in our review. That's full scaling. The 7900 XTX ran at 139 FPS average, and again, this one had low Provide input. Here's the RTX 4070's frame times at 4K very high. While the spikes across this run aren't anywhere near as extreme as we saw in the last batch for the 7900 XTX or the 4060, the card did have more excursions than we typically see. The jump to about 60 milliseconds was the worst one in this set, with each run containing at least a couple spikes greater than 12 milliseconds, or sometimes up to 26 milliseconds, for deviation from the previous frame. Most players will notice a delta of 8 to 12 milliseconds from one frame to the next, so these are relatively large spikes. Still, nothing as bad as we've seen on, say, an ARC card with CSGO originally when Intel ARC first launched, but it's not great. We want to really emphasize here that, again, a few of these spikes won't ruin the experience. You'll notice them, but it's the patterned or repeated spikes that become noticeable and particularly bad, again, like we saw in CSGO with ARC originally. But if you look around online, you'll see people are already noticing some stuttering with CS2. Our conclusion with frame time pacing is that this isn't relegated to any one card or any one vendor, but rather it seems like a roll of the dice for how the game wants to behave.